Welcome to today's webinar, Extensible by Design, how Owl Talon version 3.5 powers next-gen one-way protection for high-assurance networks. My name is Christina Detweiler, and I'll be here joined by three of our experts at Owl. First, we have Scott Coleman, our Senior Vice President of Product Management, also Phil Wan, one of our Senior Product Managers, and finally, Mike Henderson, our Senior Manager of Embedded Software. Three great minds. We've got lots to cover today. We're talking all things Owl Talon, where we're at, what's coming up with this next version 3.5, as well as kind of our overall strategy in terms of data diodes in one way here at Owl and more. First, a couple of housekeeping items. So this session will be recorded. We'll send this in the next day or so to the email you used to register. So feel free to share with colleagues and refer back to it if needed. Also, we will have time for questions. We've got about 45 minutes today. And we're doing this a little bit differently. It's going to be a fireside chat with our speakers versus a slide presentation. So feel free to use the call out box with the question mark icon in it along the way. Submit any questions you might have. We'll take breaks, get to as many as we can, either during the discussion as well as save some time at the end to get to those. Any that we can't get to, we will use the email that you used to register to follow up and get your answers after the session if needed. So, all right, Scott, I'm going to hand it over to you. But before we get into Talon, I want to wake everyone up with our favorite buzzword of AI. Every day we're hearing new AI tools, new AI threats. Can you kick us off with how AI is fitting in with diodes? Is it enabling, hindering? Kind of how do those two fit together?
Yeah, no, that's kind of an interesting way to get started. I think a couple of things come to mind with regards to diodes and AI, and I don't think it's that far from what our core message has been for whatever 2.5 decades now. The core value proposition around diodes is that it is based in hardware, right? And there's in the past you wanted assurance that data was only flowing in one direction. Now I think people are looking for assurance with these AI models that can identify vulnerabilities, can string them together, and determine ways into networks or to violate applications, right, in ways that humans may not have ever sort of come to that conclusion previously. And we're seeing that now with a lot of things that they're doing with the model. So with your bottom line is with hardware, right, you can prevent any of those things. It doesn't matter how many zero-day exploits you string together, you're still not going to be able to defeat the core basis of a diode, which is that hardware segmentation. The other ways that diodes are sort of playing in that area is obviously these models are running in these massive data centers, and people want to keep their data centers isolated. I mean, they want to suck in data, of course, to run the models against, but there's going to be a lot of companies in the future that want to keep their models isolated because you don't want to pull something in by mistake that's going to potentially either reveal what you're working on or reveal or potentially ingest something that could yield bad results. So isolation of data centers, not unlike other critical infrastructure, makes sense also. And we've been in data centers for a long time now. So it's sort of protecting the data center, but getting information out of that data center. Maybe it's a set of data that's compiled, or your solution, so to speak, at the end. But it's sort of protecting there. I think the other thing that comes into mind is, well, I guess it's the actual. So you've got the actual data models running isolated, but then the data centers themselves and the power they generate and how they operate and all that stuff. So it's probably a combination of those things, those two things, which is some of the things we've been experiencing over the last 20 years. It's just in a different sort of mind frame, I think, at this point. I don't know, Phil, have you seen anything really specific around critical infrastructure in terms of how AI and people are changing their approaches to protecting, facilities and stuff?
I think so. I think there is just increased awareness that with the proliferation of the AI tools, how easy and how it lowers the ease of attacking our critical infrastructure, right? And there's been, well documented examples where someone without the kind of like a state-sponsored, threat, someone with just AI tools have been able to find zero exploits like very easily, right? And it just makes it that much easier to not only attack, but there'll be even more proliferation of this. And it goes, as you mentioned, it goes back to our tenet, which is we have measures in place to protect our software, but the ultimate backstop in case the software gets exploited is the hardware enforced one-way nature. So even in the course of a active attack into a organization, data diodes have been allowed to operate because it still allowed visibility and did not allow that threat vector to enter into the OT space. So I think it just even makes it more important to have hardware cybersecurity solutions.
Yeah, I think you mentioned one thing there that's really important. Whereas before, the user had to be really sophisticated and had to have a lot of resources behind them. But now, I don't want to say the average Joe, but you may not need to be the world's best hacker, right, to figure out how to put things together and form an exploit that you can take advantage of. And I think that's the difference, right? What was once relegated to the people that had the resources and the time to commit to something now becomes, and you can see this with the sort of banning of certain versions of Anthropic, etc., right? Because they're just too powerful.
Yeah. So I actually have an example where it's a state-owned oil operations, and recently they have decided to design in a data diode in every one of their facility, and it's because not only the threat, but they see the AI capabilities, and in order to enable that AI capabilities, they still need to be able to protect that. And essentially, they're utilizing AI in a unified asset monitoring and control model. And the data diode, as you pointed out, protects the AI models from either data poisoning or just protect it from external threats. So that was an interesting real case where a company in the critical infrastructure is not only trying to leverage AI, but then protecting that with data diodes.
Yeah. So Mike, I think as the architect and managing engineering resources, you're sort of in an interesting position, right? You're looking to potentially leverage the power of AI to help you do your job better and your teams, but at the same time, right, we need to defend against these threats, right? So what are some of the ways you guys are using and thinking about AI?
And we've definitely implemented AI in our development pipelines and things like that to definitely take advantage of the speed that it affords us to actually work through development as a tool, right? It actually does, it's a force multiplier. You still have to have good developers. AI does help them go faster. And then we also use it, to do our vulnerability scans as well, right? So we've implemented multiple different tools to help monitor and look at our code in real time, effectively every check-in and weekly scans. So it definitely has been, I think, a good advantage to utilize it.
So in some ways, you're actually more thorough, right? Because you can actually spend the time doing the inspection than what you might have done previously, right? So it's adding I don't know, I don't know if it's another layer, but it's, I guess, more thoroughness around the work you guys are performing.
Oh, definitely. The things that it shows us sometimes is obvious, but other things are like, oh wow, yeah, that took some
Right.
more deeper thought than the average developer will get. Maybe your senior level guys, but that's the point, right? It kind of
Right.
is a force multiplier.
Right. So we're upscaling people at a certain level to a higher level. But then to your point, we still need really good people to ultimately know what the designs are and how to get things done and what the purpose is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So I'm hearing the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? So we've got these new tools, but it's still that hardware enforcement, and the diodes absolutely still have a place with the AI. So,
Right.
okay, all right. Now that everyone's brains are ticking, I want to get to Owl. So Scott, can you pivot us back to how that's aligning with what Owl's focused on from the data diode perspective and kind of the meat of Owl Talon 3.5?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, we've had a strategy in place now for a couple of years of where we're building a more modular design, right? And modular design gets you a couple of things. One, it gets you independence and separation and time to market, right? So as you create components that are more interchangeable, well, it allows you to run on different hardware, right? And what we're seeing is as part of the use case growth around diodes is around, hey, can we get something that's maybe smaller or just fits, this unique case, or it supports just need a very low volume of traffic because the thing we're protecting doesn't generate a lot of output, but we obviously want that level of security attached to it. So it's the idea that the strategy is let's create modular entities that we can work with. Some of those modules, right, are really around hardware advances, and so the more software we can take out of the diode product, so to speak, and make the software more network centric and the hardware and the FPGA more security centric, right? Then our targeted evaluation and what our security is really core. We've actually got some products now that are all hardware, right? There is no operating system running, and it's that way. There is none of the potential operating system vulnerabilities even exist, right? There's no C code or any kind of software running, regardless of the language. And once you embed stuff into your hardware, right, it becomes much stronger. And we see that from the NSA and other our experience in federal government in terms of how to make sure you secure things. So the strategy has always been, to get more modular so that we're not tied to a specific piece of hardware. We can have a range of things. We want that flexibility. So Mike talked about that. And we'll get to this in a second when we really talk about extensibility, which is the sort of crown jewels of this release. But it's that modular thing. And then things like protocol filtering diodes, right? So not only put stuff into the FPGA, but you can actually filter on them. And so if you put those filters in there, and it's about gaining awareness about not only moving the data, but gaining awareness about the data itself. And I think we can touch on some interesting examples of that in a little bit. And I don't know if people have seen, we released the IRD recently, which is the incidence response diode. That's actually running, it actually has USB interfaces versus your sort of traditional network interfaces. And that is running ARM processors in there. Again, smaller size, weight, and power, right, draw, just to fit into those interesting niches. And really, so as you think about those things and how they come together and the modular, that really leads us into this extensibility, which is in the title of the webinar. So what is extensibility, and why do we think it's important, and why are we glad we're here at this point? And it's really about taking that modular capability to the next level. We want a platform that's open, right? That our customers and our partners may be inclined to say, hey, you know what? I've got this special need, or you know what? There's maybe it's a perceived AI threat, right? That we want to mitigate. But we need to do something special. And what we're doing with this extensibility is opening that up. We're creating an environment where partners and customers will be able to add their value add to the product because they have a unique need. So It doesn't mean then it's sort of the wild, wild west and people just go do whatever they want, because that would then impact the security and the integrity of the platform. So what we're starting to do, and one of our partners is already on this path. They're starting to take their capabilities and integrate it into ours. Once they get to the point where they think they have something working, they're going to have to send it to us. They're going to send that to us. We would then sign it and make it an official part of our platform. So it's not like it's just going to go out there and you can just add whatever you want, because we're still very cautious about the security of the platform, and we want to make sure that what's being added is appropriate. So not going wide open, right? But we're introducing is a platform that has an open design feel to it and allows people to do things. It also allows our internal folks to leverage that, and I'm sure Mike will talk about that when we get a little bit further on. I mean, in the far, far future, is it like, hey, if we have a bunch of people out there developing different apps, could we have an app store or something like that? That sounds like really interesting to me. At this point, we're going to maintain a bit more security and control over those things before they would sort of be into a store where anybody could leverage them. But that's the kind of direction we're going. That's our strategy, right? To maintain our modularity, but also, can we get to the point where we're sharing applications across customers because people have the same or similar needs? So, Phil, you've been thinking about extensibility for a long time. You've been planning on this capability. What are the things that you think are important for customers to know at this point? What will they see first initially?
Right. So when I started thinking about opening up the Talon platform, which Talon 3 is very much locked down, and it was by intent and by design. But as now more and more customers start utilizing it, more and more of our partners start utilizing it, I felt it very important to provide options to our customers, and I consider partners to be our customers also. So optionality, it's maybe not a sexy word, but concept-wise, it's very, very important to our customers because no one wants to be locked into just this one path. And what I mean by optionality is it gives options or flexibility in not only Owl being able to provide solutions to our customers, but the customers themselves or our partners to provide value add capability to Talon. So why is Android or Apple so well accepted and kind of survive all those various mobile approaches? It's because they provided optionalities, Apple in the forms of a more controlled ecosystem, but they're through their app stores, and Android through best of kind of open source approach, but provide options to their end users. And so in reality, what this happens is not only will it speed up the rollout of new features to our Talon. So Talon features will no longer be gated by our quarterly OS update cadence, right? So we'll be able to roll out more PAs and PAs that maybe weren't even on our roadmap until a customer said, I really need this. Then Mike's team will be able to roll that out. Likewise, our partners will be able to roll out features that maybe their specific customer asked something, and rather than waiting for Owl to develop that, they could develop that for their customers at their own pace and requirements.
So you said a bunch of interesting things there. So let me just pick on a couple of things. When you say lockdown, you mean in the sense of security, right? It's not like
Correct.
trying to prohibit people from accessing capabilities, just that we want to be as secure as possible. I mean, that's the
Correct.
context of lockdown.
We default to the most secure position possible, and we provide options to allow customers to say, well, for this use case, maybe we could dial that back. We don't want the customer to remove the security, but to
Right.
control and adjust that.
Okay. And Mike, so Phil said something about faster PAs and stuff. Like, what's the reality there? What does that mean? How does that come to fruition?
So classically, every time we did a quarterly update, right, you had to do a full, reimage of your device, right? It was a little bit more time consuming. What this is going to allow for us is not only that we can then release, new PAs or applications asynchronously from our quarterly releases, but we can do that internally as well, so improve our throughput on actually developing. Because now I don't have to push a whole image onto a machine every time I do an update. I can actually just update individual modules, and it makes it much better for us, not only in development but for the customer.
So so modularity or extensibility is sort of modularity on steroids, right? It's like not only, hey, conceptually we have things, but now we're sort of really putting that into practice in a way that's visible to customers, right? In terms of how they would accept and upgrade, I guess.
Yeah, a
Very,
key point
very
that
good
maybe
for
we
us, I
didn't
think.
discuss
Yeah.
that is really important to our customers, and I've been hearing your feedback, is that a new PA or a improvement of an existing PA will no longer require a full Talon ISO reinstallation, right? So that is a more time-consuming process. And so let's say, just using an example, we launched the OPC UA. If we wanted to add a new feature to an OPC UA, or there was some bugs that we wanted to address, you could reinstall a newer OPC UA without a Talon reinstallation. So that's I think will be welcomed by our customers.
And so, Mike, that gives you guys freedom to do things, I guess, faster, and it just cuts back on overhead, basically, for you in terms of. And that's why speed to market's going to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Eat your own dog food kind of thing, right?
So you guys are actually using the extensibility feature to develop the PAs that you're developing, and it's the same way a partner could do the same thing, but you're actually using the architecture you guys built.
Right, and eventually we could do CV updates or anything like that through these
Right.
extensions.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. It is at this point, is it, I don't know, Mike, do you feel like this is a true do-it-yourself kit at this point, or what's the guidance you would, if people are thinking about that? I mean, obviously you guys know the product inside out, you're using this. How easy is it going to be for someone to walk up to and say, hey, I'm going to put something in place? Are we there yet, or we're still out
We
from
have
that?
the groundwork there. We
Mhm.
have what we call the starter kit, and that
Mhm.
allows partners, customers to actually create their own extension without
Mhm.
having to understand all the underlying diode type interface. It'll actually obfuscate a lot of that, help create the base level starting point for you, to containerize that particular um, device that they're trying to actually implement, right, or module.
Right. Okay. So container, you said containers. That's probably important part of this architecture, right? I mean, in terms of self-contained, right? Literally a container that's running this particular piece of software, which makes it modular, which means why someone can get a new version of OPC UA to Phil's point, because it rides sort of in its own container. Is that correct?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
customer containers are going to be required to make sure that we're safe, not only back and forth between the customer data itself, but also to the existing Talon data streams.
That makes sense. Um, Sort of on a tangent here, but it's sort of the same line of thought. On our Titan product, you guys are working on a secure file transfer pipeline, right? Or modules. How do you see things like that, getting, is that something that we're going to port to Talon? Do you see that as the future? Or is that what we're trying to do? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, absolutely. I think us being able to leverage that will be very easy, or relatively easy, to take advantage of that containerized pipeline structure to actually do a secure file transfer with manifests, um, you know, actually running the antivirus checks on it, and other features that we will deem necessary to do secure file transfers.
So basically, not only, so again, part of that whole modular architecture, we've got capabilities we're developing on other products, but now we can pull them in rather easily. And I guess what we're doing is not only just the data that's moving across, not only moving data from one domain to another, but we can now apply secure inspection to those. And to your point, sort of alluding to potentially other types of filtering and capabilities, AV, maybe even CDR, things like that, where we can build right into these pipelines. It becomes a natural fit for us. Is that, Phil, as part of the sort of the future roadmap of the product, where do you see those kinds of things fitting in?
Sure. With the upcoming release, we will be rolling out the extensibility. We also will be, right after that release, rolling out HTTP and HTTPS as a PA. Then we'll spend the remainder of this year adding an additional protocol adapter to our kind of menu of supported protocols, namely what we will target IC 104. But going into 2027, not only the secure file transfer, we'll add a handful of other PAs. In the backlog, as far as the roadmap of additional PAs would be DMP3, Modbus. But I think what's going to be really, really interesting, not only to me, but I think to the customer, is to add some additional bidirectional capabilities that can take advantage of this filtering, right? Because the concern about bidirectional data diodes is how do you securely allow that round trip of information? And the way to really assure that you are sending, or the end user is sending, that is through filtering of that data. And so Michael just started kind of dropping hints of how we could do that, which is filtering that data pipeline both into and out of the secured environment. So that's on course for 2027. So I'm sure we could have some follow-up webinars talking about exactly how we do that.
I guess, Mike, so obviously some of these things consume more CPU resources, right? Some of these filtering and stuff. It would seem logical that because we are maintaining independence from hardware, right, that we should be able to specify different hardware platforms based on the amount of filtering or whatever that's required. Is that sort of the division there?
Well, yeah, we will definitely want to inspect the hardware that it's running on to validate that what you're asking of it makes sense and that it doesn't give you a bad experience.
Right. I guess in the same way that like our torrent high-speed cards, they actually run on a different class of server in order to get, as much throughput as necessary. We'll be doing benchmarking against the different kinds of filtering and stuff to figure out what is the right recommended hardware, right, to meet the need. And so sort of publishing those results will be important. Christina, I see we have a question in the chat. I'm just gonna handle that one right now. They're asking about different kinds of filters and like XML filters, and it's funny that came up because that is actually one of the things we're contemplating. So it moved that kind of filtering, which is the sort of bread and butter of what we do in the federal government side and part of our CDSs and that kind of thing. That is the type of filters, if people want to start to think about, where's the next phase of this going? That's a really good example of something that we're definitely considering for the future in terms of actual filtering, since we're on that subject. Phil, is there other things on the roadmap you wanted to touch on? Any other specifics that are coming up that are worth noting?
Sure. So since you brought up the torrent, I think people maybe who haven't attended our previous seminars, it'd be good to talk about like the diode module that formed the Owl Talon solution. So on the 1 gig category of Talon products, We have the Radium PFD that supports the 1 gig platforms. The torrent platforms support speeds 10 gigs and up to 100 gig. Both are PFDs, protocol filtering diodes. Both are on the US government PFD certification list and are on the diode baseline. And the torrent is in the Talon torrent family of products. So 10 gig solution that is 1U with dual nodes. So 2 CPUs in one 1U platform. And then our 100 gig Talon torrent solutions consists of 2 enterprise server class, one acting as a sending mechanism and the other one acting as the receive mechanism. And I guess maybe slightly outside the Talon product line, the torrent card pairs will be offered as a separate card kit. So for those older customers who are familiar with the V7 card kits, the torrent card kit will be the replacement for those. And I think rough time frame, we're looking maybe September, October time frame when the initial product offering of those card kits will come out. So we'll have kind of back to our old days card kits as well as the diode solutions.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. The V7 cards, they've been here around longer than I've been at Owl, which is 12 years now. And they've just been a workhorse for us, for sure. They're also, for folks that don't know, are also part of the OPS 1000. But they are reaching the end of their lifespan. It's been a long, good run for them, but Torrent is here to replace them. And for folks that don't know, it's the same torrent firmware that's actually also in the IRD. So you can see how, again, back to this modular scalability thing, the torrent firmware can go from that 100 gig down to the really small sort of pocket diode IRD that's highly portable and has a sort of a single mission. But again, we're leveraging those same technologies, the same PFD capability, et cetera, across those. Speaking of IRD and stuff, and the fact that there are actually ARM processors in there, Mike, where do you see ARM impacting the future of diodes and Talon and that kind of stuff? Is there a cutoff, or is there a transition, or what do you see there?
I think we're going to transition directly into ARM, just to, like you said, to take advantage of the smaller footprints and whatnot. We'll end up porting a lot of our code to actually run on ARM. We obviously still have work to do on that, but I think that's definitely a logical step forward to make Talon in general more accessible.
Right. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Shoot, I had a question for you, Phil, and I just forgot. Christine, is there anything you can think of that we should follow up on, or other questions to ask about, or do we have any other questions in the list here?
So you mentioned OPDS. So can you talk through, we have a question around how this impacts OPDS, the extensibility, all the roadmap features. Can you talk us through, if you have a OPDS currently, kind of what those steps are, how you can realize these benefits?
Sure. You want to talk about that, Phil? Yeah.
Yeah. So we've sent out a number of product advisories providing details and kind of decision points that you should consider as you transition from OPDS Talon to the Talon 3 platform. If you have a OPDS 1000, just last week or 2 weeks ago, Christina, you and I sent out a kind of end of sale notice for the 1000s. Now that platform is still, very valid platform, and depending on the manufacturer date, the majority of them are capable of being upgraded to Talon 3. So all these good things that we talked about, you can take advantage of. However, if you do have the older series of hardware, they've been around really for a long time, right? Scott and I have been with the company for many years, but those platforms are around almost before we got here. those older hardware platforms that cannot be upgraded to the latest enterprise Linux, right? And that's been the kind of the limiting factor of which platforms we can support and cannot support. Then there are options, right, with refreshed hardware that will now set you up to not only take advantage of the current Talon, but all the cool stuff we talked about, the extensibility, the newer PAs, and what have you. So if you have those sort of questions, please reach out to your account executives, and they'd be glad to review not only your current deployed numbers, but what options there are to transition to even better solutions.
Yeah, there's a question here about the user interface and the friendliness of it. And I would just in general, Talon 3 is a massive leap forward from the previous, Talon 2 series products, just in its user interface. And in fact, we're pretty proud of the fact that you can configure the product in minutes, right, to get it up and running. And I think the marketing team has put together this pretty cool video that that actually shows that. So if anybody, I don't know if you want to put that, if there's a link you can put in the chat or whatever, Christina, that's kind of a fun video to watch just to get a sense of that. But Rick, is there or Mike rather, sorry, is there a impact in terms of extensibility on the user interface at all?
So extensions can actually register themselves into our standard cockpit, so they actually become like first level, PAs, just like our existing PAs for Talon. So that's part of us, actually evaluating and signing your packages to make sure it actually fits into our ecosystem properly and actually is user friendly for our partners sell to.
Right. Okay. So the way we designed our user interface, the fact that we use Cockpit, which is part of the operating system inherently, when you add their own individual modules, they sort of present themselves back into that user interface layer, and they're sort of there natively, automatically, which is
Right.
nice, right? It's not like, hey, we're gonna have to go and do a bunch of work to get a user interface to support this. Nope, it just gets pulled in, right? Which I think speaks volumes to how you guys have designed it and architected the solution. Phil, one other point I think about extensibility and around troubleshooting and stuff. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that a little bit. Some of the things that we talked about, lockdown and things like that. You want to talk about the ability for our support teams and things like that to help customers.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to the extensibility, I felt like based on the customer feedback that it would be really advantageous to enable some remote diagnostics capability that would, via a license, allow not only our ITS tech support team to help guide the customers through some diagnostics, but also allow those customers that are familiar with the kind of the Linux system to do their own troubleshooting, right? And so that is not something that is just open from the out the gate, if you will. It's something that has to be enabled on as needed basis, but it would really open up these flexibility to maybe do kind of some of the things that OPDS Talon was able to do, and that was a request by some of our customers. And we're listening to you, and we're trying to get these features out there. So starting with this next release, which is coming out mid-August, and we will have announcements when it is available to you. That will be a available feature.
So this was sort of in recognition that sometimes situations call for more in-depth sort of troubleshooting or examination of what's happening, etc. And so now it's a sort of a head nod towards, okay, we need to do that. It's important to help customers, but we are going to control it. It's not like it's not going to be an open platform. It is controlled, and there's a time limit on it. Too. Is that right, Phil?
Right. For the most part, our ITS team should be able to guide you, within a few days.
Mhm.
In certain cases, right, we could have a real corner case type of an issue that might require additional time, but it's not a open-ended license to be able to use, forever. We do see it as a spot use case, and I think it'll be not only welcome, but hopefully it will resolve your issue sooner rather than later. Having said that, I think we are going to continue to uh, improve our diagnostic tool sets and
Mhm.
capabilities so that just built in, right? There'll be more ability to have visibility into what is and isn't working. But despite all that, right, sometimes you need to call the experts, and this will be the way to do that.
Right. So extensibility. So this release includes the ability to extend the product, i.e., create new protocol adapters, new capabilities, and build them in. They'll present themselves in the GUI, as Mike mentioned. Um, but then also, if there is a certain, like a corner case, like you said, where it needs more investigation, we now have the ability to sort of create higher visibility, a higher degree of fidelity, basically, into what's happening and expose that, allow the troubleshooting to take place, and then the system will sort of lock itself back down again,
Right.
to ensure that you don't sort of run open. Not that it's really open, but that higher level of fidelity is not permanent, to your point. So I think,
Right.
yeah, I think that's a really good, let people know that, we know security is paramount, but operating your network is just as important. And right, and sometimes you need that visibility to figure out what's
Yeah.
going on there.
So essentially, you're temporarily dialing back the lockdown security aspects of it
Mhm.
to allow flexibility to investigate things, and then once that is completed, lock it back down.
Right, makes sense. That's cool. Good. I don't know, Christine, was there any other questions that came up in the chat that we haven't addressed yet, or?
So I want to ask one. Let me just go ahead and pop this screen up for those
Okay.
of you. So here we have two QR codes you can scan. So the first one will take you to a page that shows the current releases and versions of all of Owl's products. And on there, there's an email list that you guys can sign up for. So once we have 3.5 coming out or any other product updates, that'll make sure that you're on that list. We also will share it on social, and your account managers will reach out as well. And then we do have a get in touch QR. So that second code will take you right to our contact page if you have additional questions. We have 2 minutes left, so I kind of want to do a rapid fire for the three of you. So we have this extensibility. I think you all have very different perspectives on, kind of how you've been involved in it and what's coming with it. So I think our last question is, what are you most excited for? Have you heard, from different partners or customers, a certain use case that you think this is really going to solve? What's your final thought to leave our attendees with about this extensibility?
So I got one that comes to mind. We have a partner that we've worked with for over 10 years now, and as soon as this was ready, and they actually got a little early taste of it. I guess we sent it to them last week or so, and they've already taken what they have in terms of a filter, and feel that within a couple of weeks they're going to have it up and running. So their immediate adoption and incorporation into it so quickly, was really made us understand that this is something that makes sense in the marketplace, and that's going to have some real impact into for our partners. So that's my sort of immediate takeaway on it.
Very cool. Phil, what about you?
Yeah. So as the product manager and kind of a car guy, I see this next release with the extensibility and the license as I just turbocharge my car and I put a really big turbo on it and it's spooling up, and the team is just gonna be just going flat out, and we're gonna have some not only exciting features but fast. And I now have not only my Talon team, but we have our partner teams and potentially even our customer teams, and we're gonna be rolling out some really cool features super fast.
Very. All right, Mike, we've got 20 seconds left.
Well, I'd have to mirror Phil as well. The fact that it enables my team to actually implement and develop and test while still in a full enforced, released ISO is going to be a game changer for us to actually be able to move forward faster on our development.
All right. Well, with that, perfectly, 0-0. Thank you everyone for joining. We encourage you to get in touch with the team, keep the questions coming, and then stay posted for announcements and further information about this very exciting release. So thank you, speakers. Thank you, attendees. Everyone have a fantastic day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.